Awesome, man. Welcome.
Yeah, hey, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, man. Super excited to have this chat with you. I know our audience is got lots of messages with people excited for this one. So let's get right into it, man. Why don't you start off? Tell us a little bit about your
Sure
background because
thing.
you have a very interesting background, and then give us a little background on Wrapbook.
Sure thing. Well, first off, to everyone for being here. Thanks to Mike for inviting me. It's tough days in the past and probably some tough days ahead, and so it's a pleasure to come together with all of you and just to kind of work through what the future looks like and what we can be doing to set ourselves up for success moving into the future. Like Mike said, my name is Cameron Woodward. I served as the founder and executive producer of a commercial production company for about 10 years called Sprinkle Lab, based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And through that process of really digging in and getting messy in the world of production, everything from, you know, winning work, bids, producing work, and being on that treadmill, learned a lot about production. And in that process, I found that my strengths were really in the back office, things like insurance, things like film finance, and really the nitty gritty operational work that makes production and media creation possible. And so after serving as executive producer at Sprinkle Lab for a number of years, I actually started an insurance agency. And the insurance agency was called Film Casualty Insurance Agency. And it was specialized to focus specifically on image makers and to really work with executive producers, coordinators, and line producers in understanding the risks that they were taking in the businesses that they were running and helping them find solutions to mitigate those risks. So one of those primary functions is risk transfer, aka insurance. And so that was a way that we were able to really kind of extend our interest in filmmaking, or for myself, I could extend my interest in filmmaking through insurance, specifically for our market. And from there, from having run a production company and then running an insurance agency, I had a pretty good understanding of the challenges that we face operationally on set. And one of the biggest ones and one of the biggest areas that was very painful was actually on-set production payroll. It wasn't just the pain in terms of transaction costs, it was actually the pain of implementing payroll services on set. As all of you know, you have a very limited amount of time to capture large amounts of content. And when you have a payroll process that's very paper oriented, it's just a real big pain in the neck. And so, kind of bringing together all of the loves of my life, technology from the San Francisco area, filmmaking, and insurance, it kind of all got smashed together into Wrapbook, which is now a technology solution and platform for filmmakers to both onboard, manage, and pay their cast and crew, as well as find insurance solutions and risk transfer solutions for their business.
That's great, man. Yeah, I mean we use you guys for payroll and soon to be insurance too, and we can't say enough about the service and all that. Obviously, insurance, being that you guys and you have a background in production, your differentiator there versus other production companies is your understand, or versus other insurance companies is your understanding of what we do and what kind of coverages we need. What do you think your biggest differentiator is as a payroll company or a production payroll company?
It's a great question. I would say the biggest differentiator is similar, is that we know the actual pain that is occurring on sets to manage a payroll process. And with that understanding and that empathy for the pain that producers and coordinators are feeling, we've built a product for producers and for EPs and for the accounting department. So I would say the number one differentiator is just that it's a digital first solution built from the ground up in code with beautiful user interface so that everyone can use it. And two, it's understanding that one of the most painful and annoying processes is that come shoot day, you've got 200 people. All of them are eager to get to work, to build up the set or strike set or set up tables or run power or find parking. And As this is all going on and there's a limited shoot day, you have producers or heads of departments saying like, hey, can you wait 10 minutes before you get to work, filling out an I-9, filling out a W-2, filling out an NDA. And they're just, it sounds ridiculous if you don't work in our industry, but there just isn't enough time. And that's a very, very painful thing to do, not only on a shoot day, but then to do it over again. If you're a grip, you're working on 30 different productions in 2 months with 15 different production companies, and they're asking you every single week to fill out the same paperwork over and over again. It's not only painful for executive producers and production managers, it's also extremely painful and annoying for cast and crew members. And so the way that we've really gone about designing our workflow with our software is creating a solution that gives a lot of power both to cast and crew members and to producers and executive producers by making everyone's life easier. And the primary way that we do this at Wrapbook is that when you sign up for a Wrapbook account as a cast or crew member, you get your own Wrapbook profile that you can bring with you to any other company that uses Wrapbook. And so once that information and profile has been built, as an executive producer, as a coordinator, you can just crew up and you're ready to go. It's off to the races. And I would argue that that is one of the most important and useful differentiators between us and existing solutions. And then the second thing, Mike, is because of all of the automation, because of all of the interface and the digital solution, it saves time for producers in actually wrapping the job. No more calculations of time cards. It's all automated, done, calculator. No more dealing with disjointed reporting across multiple productions. It's all in one centralized place. No more needing to run multiple payrolls on a paper process through mail or wire transfers. Done. ACH from the company to Wrapbook, which pays out all of the taxes and deals with the compliance, straight to ACH to all of the cast and crew side. So what's just fantastic is that it's what everybody knows. Technology is here to stay. It's here to make our lives better, and it just needs to be built. And so I have the distinct privilege to really listen to EPs and cast and crew members and build this solution.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I know from us using it and just all my coordinators, how much easier it is than previous solutions that we used to use. And yeah, just jumping on to other productions and people that were already signed up in Wrapbook and being able to pay them easily is great. So couldn't agree more, man.
Is it saving you guys money and time?
It's definitely saving us time, which time is money. That's definitely the case in our industry. Yep. So, for sure. So I want to jump into
That's awesome.
The nitty gritty of the conversation tonight, and that's obviously the current pandemic and the current state of the world that we're in right now, not only as an industry but as a world together. So why don't you break down a little bit how COVID-19 has affected your business directly, which in turn obviously is because your clients are being affected.
Right. Yeah, it's a great question. We have the great position to see all of the different types of projects that our clients are doing. So things were looking great. We were all busy. Not only your organization, but many other organizations. Lots of really exciting projects coming, people excited for summer. It was really incredible seeing the volume of projects coming through and how excited our clients were to make those projects. Everything from short films, features, commercials, photo shoots, events, games, all of it. It was really awesome. And, when the pandemic hit, we saw obviously, like so many of you that are probably watching, just projects dry up, gone. Now it's not totally gone, and that is the silver lining. And people are all coming to grips with this new reality across all other industries. And so, storytelling is never going away, regardless of what happens. So long as there's breath in the lungs of people around the world, there will be stories to tell. And as filmmakers and as photographers, that means we're necessary. But I do think that we were one of the first industries hit hardest. I mean, that's saying something that maybe isn't fair because I know so many people are down and out, but projects dried up. They were really going strong and then out the next day. And so for our business, obviously, like, we exist to enable the projects that producers do. So it's obviously challenging, but we really are in a position that we can weather the storm. And, being a technology company at Wrapbook, we're very lucky that we did not build our organization in kind of a centralized command and control way. We have, because of it's a digital solution, we're able to run payrolls regardless of where we are all around the world. And that's been something that's been really important and great for us, because it has meant that we've not had to delay payments to anyone, which is really important to us as a company, to be able to make sure that everybody gets paid on time as fast as possible,
Yeah.
especially because so many people are in such a cash-strapped position right now. So, it's definitely affected our business directly, just in terms of volume being down. But thankfully, because we're a technology business, we've been able to stay totally up and be working on the product and getting people paid as we kind of move forward into this new world.
Yeah. It's cool, man. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you hit the nose right on the head with being able to pay people and be available and already be kind of a remote company, and not really have that part of the business affect you. But of course, the lack of shooting, lack of projects being able to happen right now, and just leading up into the lockdown, that we saw the same thing. We just saw projects kind of not confirming, or ones that were confirmed dropping off. Because we shoot internationally too, that was happening on jobs overseas, months before this even hit us in the States. So, it was tough, and it is tough. But it's a good segue into my next question, which is insurance. We all, as producers, have insurance. We pay a lot for insurance. It's a big yearly expense. And I know the question I've had, and we've had as a company, and a lot of other producers that I've spoken to over the past few weeks, is there any way that insurance can help us right now for the shoots that were canceled and things like that, to make up some of that lost income? And how does insurance look when we get out of this whole situation?
Those are really good questions. Before jumping into answering the question directly about insurance, I think it's important to talk about risk. And I think, the pandemic is opening the eyes of a lot of different business operators across industries to the reality of risks in opening and operating and building a company. And obviously, insurance is just one tool that an operator can use to manage risk, to protect themselves and to protect their business. But yeah, Mike, to your question as to what people that are watching this can look to is, first, I think it's really important to pull out that insurance contract, get in touch with your broker. And I'd say one of the big considerations to look at in that policy is something called civil authority. So civil authority is a fairly common coverage form in DICE policies, and DICE policies are primarily the type of insurance product that apply to production companies, whether they're print or video or somewhere in between. And what a civil authority form or coverage does is that it would pay out a claim in response to, say, a municipality or a state making your shoot inoperable by their authority. And so this is an area that if you are a producer and you haven't yet taken a look to see if there's potentially a civil authority claim for you, then that's something I would really encourage producers to reach out to their insurance brokers and see if they can file a claim. Something else worth mentioning on this point, I think it's worth business owners filing a claim with their carriers, generally speaking, because it's very difficult for me, even as an insurance broker, to know all the different types of scenarios that could trigger an insurable interest or claim without seeing the contracts that you hold. So, if you had an insurance policy before this pandemic, there's a chance, at least a better chance, that there's some sort of language in there that can be applied to your company versus trying to buy an insurance policy today. Insurance companies are in the business of protecting their own downside. So as reality changes and models improve, they write exclusions into those documents. But it's very possible that, say, somebody watching tonight has a policy that they've been renewing for a number of years that stayed more or less the same. There could be some very generous language in there worth submitting a claim to see if there's any possible positive claim outcome.
Right. Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. What other coverages should people be looking into right now to see if they have currently, or especially going forward, that could help them in a situation like this in the future, or that could be another way to claim something right now?
That's a great question. I mean, the first thing is call your insurance broker and see if there's any resources available. And if your broker isn't helpful, push further and get to the carrier to see if by submitting a claim, it triggers any sort of claim outcome for you. Things that you should think about and you should Google. Look up business interruption insurance. Look up imminent peril. Look up civil authority. These words, if they show up in your policy, they could indicate that there is some area for coverage that would maybe be worth exploring. There is so much changing right now, and so much legislation being passed that it's somewhat difficult to answer with any certainty as to how insurance will play out. So, for example, I know in the restaurant industry, there's a lot of debate right now, which is most insurance policies for restaurants have a business interruption clause that's triggered in the event of property damage. Well, some lawyers are saying, well, the virus landing on restaurant gear is causing damage to the property, therefore we can interpret that the loss of use should be triggered. Well, of course, the insurance carrier's lawyers are going to say, no, that's not the case. What's interesting, though, with these types of cases is that it really takes the judicial department, the courts, to figure out where this is going to fall. And in a scenario where you have, trillions of dollars of bailouts, I just don't know where this is going to fall. It could be that, there's very liberal interpretations of the contracts that side with business owners, and then ultimately carriers get bailed out. It's changing so rapidly, and the scenario and the situation that we find ourselves in is so strange and surreal that it's really difficult to know. But again, to your question specifically on your insurance, if you have insurance with your business, the smartest thing you can do is to call your broker and look up some of those words that I was just saying: civil authority, imminent peril, business interruption. Those types of things can become very useful for understanding where you stand with your insurance and what you can do. Right.
So would it be safe to say too, if say, I know we have all of those coverages in our insurance, but say, another producer calls their insurance company, they don't have those coverages. It'd be safe to say that probably good things to add to their policies, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can find it. What's interesting is I think we're finding ourselves in such a unique situation that, even insurance markets are finding themselves very quickly kind of becoming shy. So I do know that a number of carriers within our industry are specifically pulling civil authority coverage out of their policies, being very, very careful with the policy documents that they're currently selling for new business. I think that this will balance out in the next couple of months. I think people are going to want access to these insurance products, and where there's a demand, there's almost always a supply. But
Right.
things are still so new and kind of changing rapidly that it's hard to say. But yes, if you're a producer and you don't have a DICE policy and you're kind of looking to figure out, hey, how should I navigate this into the next months and years?
Right.
It's really about thinking about the total risk of your business and then finding ways to mitigate that risk and then ways to transfer that risk through an insurance product ultimately at the end of the day.
Right. Yes, for sure. That's what insurance is all about, right? That's why we need it.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. Yeah, it's one of those things where nobody really wants to pay for it, and then I'm telling you now, it's like, well, there isn't really a bunch of coverage. It can be very frustrating, but for pure risks like loss of damage or somebody getting hurt, it's essential.
Yeah, and I think, for most of the stories and most of the conversations I've been having, it's not like anyone was really stuck holding a major bill that at least I've heard of. And if there's anyone in the audience that was stuck with a bill, a producer stuck with a big bill of a job that confirmed, like, please reach out. Love to hear your story, and maybe there's something that Cameron can point you in the right direction. But all the things that we had going on that were canceled after being confirmed, we had good contracts in place. We had estimates and language in our estimates that protected us, in case the shoot was canceled within 24, 48 hours, whatever the case was. So that's, obviously another part of that risk is making sure you have good contracts in place, and you're communicating clearly with your client on what those expectations are. But, with insurance, yeah, we need it. You need it for those days where it's the worst case scenario and you don't want to be stuck with that bill. Luckily for us, and I know many that I've spoken to, they weren't. So, but it's good to know if there is anything, because we're all losing a little bit of money right now by not working. So it's, is there anything you can go out there other than what the government's putting out there that we could, leverage from the insurance that we've been paying for, myself over 16 years. So,
Totally. Now I have a question with you guys. When you got hit, did you have a crew booked up at the time that you had to ultimately say, hey, the job fell through, and deal with it that way, or no?
Yes, we had. One of our shoots was literally canceled the day before. So we had everything was confirmed. And again, our contract stated that if canceled within 24 hours, it was basically 100%. And we still saved the client some money. There was a few things like equipment rentals and certain purchases that we were able to return that we didn't have to end up putting on the final invoice. But, crew was booked and you got to pay them. You confirm them whether they weren't working another job because the whole city was shut down or not. It's, a confirmation is a confirmation, and we paid everybody out, and that was fine. The client, paid and understood. And, ultimately it was their decision on one of the shoots to cancel it. It wasn't the city that was shut down. We could have still gone on with the shoot, but I think at that point, them as the client wanted to mitigate any kind of fallout on, putting 50 people together in the same room right when all this stuff was starting to fall down, and they didn't really want to take on that kind of fallout. So, so they understood in that case. On one of the other shoots that was canceled, it was because the city, put a stop on any gatherings of more than 20 people, I think it was at the time. And, our shoot was about 30, so we had to cancel that one. But again, there was that one was a little easier because we had not confirmed the whole crew yet. So that was the one shoot where we was canceled the day before was on a Saturday, and then the following Monday was another shoot that was canceled before we had confirmed everybody. Even though the client had given us confirmation, we waited because we just saw it coming. So we just, we held out confirming what we could. And then when that news came through that we had to cancel the shoot, there wasn't as much expenses associated with that one. So that one turned out better. So yeah. But similarly to policies that we want to make sure that we have, especially moving forward, are there any exclusions that we should look out for in some of those policies that might not cover a situation like this if we were to go into a lockdown like this again?
Oh man, I think I think most producers will not and did not have uh, clauses in their insurance to cover a situation like this. Now, I actually do know in the insurance world, allegedly, I saw some articles last night that like Wimbledon and England actually did have pandemic insurance, and as such, is going to be made whole from their loss to the amount of like $131 million. Over the last, I think it's like 17 or something years, they've been paying $2 million a year for this coverage. So, their organization had somebody thinking about risk and really executing very, very well over a long period of time. And, it's going to make all of the difference in the world. Now, again, it's important to remember that insurance is not in place to get you ahead, right? Like, these are not speculative risks. It's not like roulette where if you put the money on, you're making more. The intention of insurance is to get you to pre-loss, right? So their insurance over there at Wimbledon, hopefully and ideally, is going to get them to a place that is their pre-loss scenario minus $2 million, which is the cost of the policy. Right. So, I bring up this example to say there are things to think about in terms of risk as a production company. A global pandemic, yeah, maybe we should have been aware of it. I mean, international health experts have been warning for this for years. But look, your typical executive producer, kind of above your pay grade, right? I mean, it's difficult. There are things, though, there are things in our insurance policies as filmmakers, though, that we should consider. Things like, business interruption insurance. And, again, we're going to have to see what kind of products emerge over the next kind of year and a half. Most of our policies as filmmakers are written for like, hey, what happens if my Alexa gets stolen out of my car? What happens, what happens if power goes out? I've had power go out on a shoot. As you know, if you're a filmmaker, that's a disaster. Your day is gone. So, most of our policy documents are really written for things that we think about, not these big, massive global types of pandemics. But exclusions worth thinking about. If you're a filmmaker purchasing insurance for your organization, the most common exclusions that really hurt people are things like unattended vehicle exclusion, whereby you have coverage for all of your gear for basically anything with the exception of an unattended vehicle. So, that's a very common exclusion that people will need to be kind of keeping their eyes out for if they're a producer. Again, the insurance is designed fairly well for us producers. It's just, this one is really a painful one. And, one of the questions I know we were talking about discussing today is actually like on workers' comp. Like how should we think about workers' comp for our cast and crew members, right? Well, workers' comp, there's emerging guidance from departments of insurance that say, yes, workers' comp applies for jobs where you're directly in the line of exposure to the virus, such as a healthcare worker, an EMT, etc. But for us as filmmakers, it would be excluded. It's not a normal interaction in the work that we conduct. So as such, workers' comp will cover it. But there are kind of constantly changing guidance that's happening. I suggest a Google search, or actually we put together at Wrapbook a really useful guide that I think I can share some links that give considerations for cast and crew members. Things like, potentially disability, or, I can pull it up. There is relief for cast and crew members to consider on the insurance side. And then as well, it's really useful for not only business owners, but for cast and crew to consider what's coming up in this CARES Act that the federal government just passed.
Yeah, no, it'll be helpful. We're going to post most of the links you shared with us before this call too for our audience, and we'll post that on our Facebook and the rest of our social media. Obviously, I know you have it on your blog, and lots of great posts on you guys' blog, so everyone should definitely check those out. But yeah, the workers' comp was something that came up in a bunch of my conversations, especially moving forward. If someone was to actually contract COVID-19 from being on set, but I know from previous conversations with you, and as well as some other my current insurance broker, that it would not be covered.
Yeah. So there are things to consider. Like there's disability insurance that could theoretically exist if you were unable to work due to medical quarantine. There's paid family leave worth considering. And again, this all depends on your state, depending on where you're watching this. Perhaps you're unable to work because you need to take care of a family member that has the illness. Something obviously that we haven't touched on this evening that many Americans are very well aware of, especially in our industry, is the unemployment insurance. This is actually one of the big reasons why an entertainment payroll company is important, right? Our industry for the last 10, 15 years, many people are just very used to getting 1099s. And thankfully, as I understand it, the CARES Act, federal government is extending some of these unemployment rights to 1099 workers. But classically, if you didn't get a W-2, you were not eligible for certain benefits that employees are eligible for, such as unemployment, workers' comp, and these become essential in these types of emergency situations. So it's absolutely worth pointing out. I hope that if you're watching this and you lost a job, that you file for unemployment immediately. I'm sure most of you have, but there's no shame or stigma in this. This is, again, something that's just absolutely unbelievable. There's also paid sick leave worth considering. So that's definitely up there. Also, California, worth noting, they did extend the enrollment time to April 30th for covered California. So if you don't have insurance in the state of California, there was an announcement that the enrollment deadline was extended. So that's very, very useful to know, just considering everything that's going on.
For health insurance?
Yeah, for health insurance. So if you missed the enrollment window, it was extended.
Okay. So let's go through a few things though there, because that's important, because I know there's a lot of crew watching too. So for crew, outside of it, especially if you've been run through payroll, which would make it easier to collect the unemployment, what paid sick leave would only work if they're actually sick? Or are you saying paid sick leave could work if they're not sick?
So the guidance that we have is that if you or a family member get sick, then you could qualify for paid sick leave. And paid sick leave is paid to you at your regular pay rate or an average based off of your last 90 days of work. So that is the guidance that we had 2 weeks ago. I would be unwise to say that it could even have possibly changed in the last week. Stuff is just changing so rapidly. But that is the guidance from a week and a half ago. Yeah.
Right. It's like nightly, changes nightly, man. It's kind of crazy, but
it is.
I mean, one big thing that has changed a lot in the past week, and I think it stopped changing, but it's still a mystery a little bit because there's just so many rules to it. But that's the SBA loans and the relief that's out there for small business owners, which I know I've had a few chats with other producers with similar size companies, smaller size companies, larger size companies than us. But let's walk through the different SBA options at this point, or different grants that the government's offering right now, like PP and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the small business loans and grants, the ones that people have been hearing about is the Paycheck Protection Program. There's also the Economic Injury Disaster Loans. There's loan subsidies and bankruptcy. There's employee retention credits and payroll tax relief. There's modifications to your net operating losses. As well, there's labor provisions included in this as resource. So we can kind of just dig through this. So the Paycheck Protection Program, you'll be hearing people talking about the PPP. It's a new SBA loan. People are able to get access to this program through their bank. Now, here's the deal. Unfortunately, it is so overrun. Apparently, like, funding is already like potentially drying up for this. I saw today that Congress is like looking to add more money to it. So if you haven't signed up for it already, I suggest that you do, but the line is long. I mean, this is just, it's wild.
Yeah.
So essentially through that program though, employers with fewer than 500 employees are eligible to borrow up to $10 million through June 30th. And those loans are eligible for forgiveness. So these are really just great loans to help keep your staff on, to have them work as best as they can, but really, keep people at work and potentially have that loan forgiven at the end of the term.
Yeah.
There's also the economic injury disaster loans. These are low interest loans, also provided by the SBA to help you live through this. These loans are eligible across all 50 states, but they are easier to get your hands on today than SBA loans were before this all went down. And so, the timing on this is the coverage period is from January 31st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. So you do have time to go through this program. And again, we've said it over and over again, things are changing rapidly, but there is time, and I do encourage people to fill out their applications and to submit if they are really hurting and if their businesses have been totally disrupted by what's occurring.
Yeah. Now I know with the PPP loan, it's there and it's forgivable if you maintain or hire back anyone that you laid off, and you use a specific portion of that. I think it's 75% towards that payroll, and the rest can be used towards rent and expenses. My question is, if you're a single owner of a business and you're freelancing or you're part-timing a lot of employees through payroll, and you're essentially the only person on your payroll, are you still eligible for any of this relief or for any of these forgivable loans to just cover your income loss at this time?
That's a great question. So if you're in that kind of unique production scenario, you'd maybe be eligible to file for unemployment through a payroll company like us here at Wrapbook. And we would encourage you to do that. You do it just like you would filing for unemployment for anyone. You would name us as your employer, and hopefully you'd be off to the races. The other option is, as well, like I was mentioning, the legislation is extending the concept of unemployment to contractors as well. So that's definitely worth looking into. The other option is, of course, if you are in that kind of great scenario where you have an LLC or a business and you have the potentiality to apply for one of these disaster loans. It's not the PPP because you're not keeping people on staff, but you could maybe get some cash flow and cash reserve at a really, really low interest rate just to kind of get through it. And obviously it's not as good as free money in a really difficult time right now, but if you are trying to get maybe a larger volume or trying to keep yourself afloat, that could be a great solution. So I'd say if you're in that kind of unique producer middle ground between kind of owning your own business, but working with other companies, I'd say really look into the unemployment, because you probably have some payments from payroll companies over the last couple of years or the last year.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good. Good answer there. Good info. Before I get into our last question, I want to put it out to the audience right now. We might have time for one or two questions. So depending on where you're watching the stream from, there's probably options to submit some questions, and our producers that are running the broadcast will feed me one on the screen here after I get through this last question, which is, not nothing that's a definitive answer, but more of your opinion and my opinion on how you see the industry rebounding after something like this, so unprecedented, something we've never seen. I was around for the 2008 financial crash, and there was obviously a few months there where it affected business, but I felt like we rebounded quickly, and I never really felt the pain myself financially or my business. My business was a lot smaller at the time, but we got through it. We got through it just fine. How do you see our industry, not only the film industry, the print advertising industry, content industry in general? How do you see it rebounding from something like this?
It's a great question, and it's all of the economists scratching their heads trying to figure out what the markets are going to look like coming into the next year and what happens. I will say though, like you just mentioned, Mike, like we've been in this business a long time. People need content and people love stories, and part of an economy coming back online is telling stories and taking photographs and selling product. I think what's interesting is that we as an industry, as filmmakers, as producers, I think we were, like I've said earlier, one of the first to go down. But I also think that we're going to be one of the first to come right back up, quite frankly.
Yep.
And so, this is not a great situation, but I do think we will be some of the first people back to work as soon as restrictions are lifted up. And I think it's going to start as a trickle and then end as a wave. I mean, we're looking at, I didn't have the chance to share this, but what's been really cool is to see some projects coming through on the Wrapbook platform where artists are telling interesting stories in a distributed way through Zoom, through their phones, doing stuff from their home studios and coming together and doing really cool work. So, what's great about human creativity is that it really can flourish under all different types of scenarios. So, I think we're going to start with those types of projects that we're seeing coming through. It's going to maybe jump up to cruise to 3, 4, 5, limitations will be lifted and people will get right back into it. And, again, the economic recession that could happen, painful, suffering, but, and that's terrible. And my heart goes out to everybody that's affected because surely all of us will be. But, for us as filmmakers, as media creators, as storytellers, I think we will be some of the first to come back online. And so for our own families and for our colleagues, I think that's very good news. I also think there is another silver lining in this, Mike, and that is like with this time off, we are getting better at using these tools like Zoom, like Wrapbook, like Slack, software that actually makes our business operations a lot slicker, a lot cheaper, a lot faster. So, my hope is that while this is painful, it can kind of inspire in us to become smarter as we kind of grow into the future. So look, I don't want to undersell how painful this is. I know a lot of us are in really dire straits and in a hard spot. But I think, we hold on and we keep pushing through. We're going to be all right.
Yeah, man. I mean, I couldn't agree more, especially with the comment on just how this is making us all more efficient. I know just from us and having been working remotely now for a month or a little over a month, just using all these tools, using technology to make this happen. And when we get back together in person or back in the office, just now that we know how to use these technologies, even the technology we're using right now to broadcast the stream. I mean, we spent the past 3 days having a great time figuring out all the bugs with it and all that kind of stuff, but great software, great way to actually broadcast shoots remotely while they're happening, which I know is happening a lot just from all my conversations with clients and brands out there that are actually shooting within the restrictions, working with artists that are home, either with their families, using families as talent, using their homes as locations, making content. Obviously, a lot of animated content, CGI is being made right now. But the thing that really inspires me and my company the most, and we've been sharing a lot of in our newsletter, our weekly newsletter, is just the creativity that's happening right now. You put a bunch of creative people in quarantine and watch out. Like this is, giving us time to create and to make, amazing personal work, or just, you make a creative board and amazing things happen. What I've been finding online, and we're sharing a lot of it in our newsletters, and on our social media. But it's kind of cool, you know. And again, not to downplay what's going on in the world right now, especially with the amount of people that are getting sick and that this is affecting and you know, ultimately killing in some cases. But you know, the fact that everyone's coming together, we're figuring this all out. You know, and there are resources out there, and there's, you know, vehicles like these types of conversations that people can watch and hear, not only to reassure them that we're going to be fine, that things are going to get back to normal, that there are going to be challenges coming out of this, but that, you know, there are a lot of smart and creative people out here looking to bounce back from this the best way we can. So we got time for probably
Absolutely.
one or two questions here. And the first question I got here is, whose responsibility is it to buy the insurance, the producer or the cast and crew members? And I can answer this one, Cameron. So normally on most film productions or advertising shoot productions, it's ultimately the producer's responsibility to ensure the whole shoot. And Cameron can correct me if I'm wrong, but ultimately, because we are the party that is paying everyone, that is booking the majority of the locations, signing the majority of the contracts, it is the producer's responsibility to actually carry the insurance and ensure everyone and everything that is on set and part of the production. Cast and crew members that are run through payroll, their insurance is actually purchased through the payroll in the form of workers' comp and disability and things like that. If you are a 1099 freelancer, at that point, it is your responsibility to carry your own workers' compensation, which us as producers, we have to verify that those people that are 1099 actually have that insurance, because if they don't, and we don't run them through payroll, and God forbid something happens, then there's ultimately a problem. Would you agree with all that, Cameron?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting on the 1099 point. Oftentimes, as I understand it, in a workers' comp scenario, the courts will find that the production company that was paying the contractor that was uninsured needs to find protection under the production company's workers' comp. But you are right. Like, if you want to get around as being a smart producer and you have cast or crew that are insisting on being paid as contractors, you can find them that workers' comp coverage through a third party, or ask them to carry their own. And then that's totally permissible. It's just absolutely essential, though, that anybody working at any time has some sort of workers' comp insurance, whoever's it is, covering that labor. And then just one other kind of inside baseball on insurance. Sometimes insurance exists for insurance. So Mike's exactly right. Like at Versatile, you have your own policy, but sometimes you're working for a client on behalf of an agency, and that agency has their own insurance, oftentimes called a wrap-up policy, which is actually becomes the primary insurance, which then wraps over your insurance as well, giving you kind of like a full end-to-end risk solution on behalf of the agency's client. And typically those types of policies do exist from ad agencies specifically to benefit their clients in the event that their very expensive creative doesn't get made for some reason.
Right. And those policies usually would carry like an errors and omissions coverage, correct?
Yeah, those wrap up policies are usually pretty hefty and cover everything: lost property, loss of errors and omissions. Which, for those watching, an errors and omissions is like a lawsuit brought against the production for like somebody claiming that the concept was stolen, or that there was art in the commercial or in the photograph that was under copyright and not allowed to be used for commercial use. So those wrap-up policies are pretty big. But to answer that question that I think you answered beautifully, you're the producer, it's your company. You've got to be really responsible for making sure that the mandatory risks like workers' comp are covered, and then you'd be a fool not to have your property insured, or your rental gear insured, or people's autos insured while they're driving to and fro set.
Right, exactly. And we got time for one last one. And this question is, as a freelancer, how can I be sure I'm covered by insurance before going on set? and I'm assuming they're meaning as just a freelancer on the shoot. And I think, again, if you are a 1099 contractor and you are going on set as a 1099 contractor, you're being paid by invoicing the production company and you are not being run through payroll, then you need to have your own workers' comp policy. It's smart to have a general liability as well, is what I tell most of those freelancers, especially if you have equipment that you're bringing that's yours, that you're charging for. A lot of set designers will have that too, and they'll have workers' comp coverage for a lot of their assistants that come on the shoot. And if they don't, if they only have workers' comp for themselves, then we'll run their assistants through payroll to make sure that they're covered through workers' comp. What do you think of that? Is anything to add to that, Cameron?
Yeah, I mean, I will answer that question in a more literal way. So the question is, like, how can I be sure that I'm covered by insurance? Well, the insurance industry has something called a certificate of insurance, which is an actual piece of paper that spells out exactly the insurance that the person or the third party you're working with has or doesn't have. So if you look, 90% of the time, if you're a freelancer working on somebody else's set and you were to ask them for a certificate of insurance, they'd look at you like you're crazy. It's not a common practice. But if you are renting somebody your location or if you're really just curious, if it's a company you've never worked with before and you want to know, like, hey, is this legit? You could very easily and legitimately ask for a certificate of insurance just to have a full understanding of what the third party or the production company's insurance looks like. Another thing is, if you're a freelancer, it's important not to be confused about the designation. Is it 1099 or a W-2? If you are on a payroll through a payroll company like us here at Wrapbook, you have workers' comp insurance through us. You have an employment insurance through us, and that's how it works. If you're a 1099 or a loan out, which means that you have your own corporation, like Mike's saying, you want to buy yourself a policy and you want to buy yourself disability insurance or workers' compensation insurance just to make sure that you're covered. But the literal answer to the question, how do you know? You find yourself a certificate of insurance.
Yeah. Yeah, we issue COIs or certificates of insurance all the time, especially like you said, if you're renting out a location or if you're renting us equipment for the production. We have obviously the insurance to protect all those things, and we issue a COI, which is the proof that we are insuring your property, be it a location property or equipment property. Great answers, great questions. Thank you to the audience. And my fire is officially out, so that kind of means we're out of time. Wouldn't be a fireside chat without a fire. So, Cameron, man, thank you so much for joining us. This was great. I'm sure everybody out there enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. For anyone that isn't using Wrapbook, look them up. They've saved us so much time. It's really been truly a lifesaver for us, just running the amount of work that we do, just running payroll through you guys' software. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining me. Thank you to everyone tuning in. We're going to do this again next week. My guest next week is Dennis Dickinson from Dickinson Wealth Strategies. Dennis is my financial advisor. He's also a great friend of mine. We're going to chat about some strategies for retirement through a time like this, and obviously coming out of a time like this. Dennis is a great dude, funny guy. It's going to be a great chat. But again, Cameron, thank you very much. Everyone out there, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay home. Appreciate you. Take care.
Thank you.